They made you a threequel, but everyone refused.
Hello my fellow YouTubers and subscribers, and welcome to my latest movie review, where today I review
The Godfather, Part 3.
the third and final film of Francis Ford Coppola's Godfather trilogy, released in 1990 and directed by Francis Ford Coppola. So, The Godfather Part 3, well, this is an interesting movie. It's very divisive among the fans, and it was not released directly after the first two. A lot of time had passed, and I'm not sure that Coppola even was sure that he wanted to make the third one straight away. But obviously the first two were incredibly successful and considered two of the greatest films of all time. And he obviously thought, well, it is a trilogy, and I guess he wanted to finish it as a trilogy. So this is how he chose to do it. And I want to give a shout out to Jack the Film Fanatic. I want to thank him very much for getting me into these films and for recommending them to me. And just to clarify, this is a review of the theatrical cut, not the Coda new cut that they're releasing. I haven't seen that one yet. I'll try to see it if I can, and I'll put up a separate review for that if I do. Anyway, the plot of Godfather 3 is as follows. Michael Corleone, now in his 60s, seeks to free his family from crime and find a suitable successor to his empire. And he also seeks to find remorse and redemption after killing his brother, Fredo. So, The Godfather Part 3. Well, this movie gets really bashed. Yeah, I honestly, for the life of me, don't quite fully understand why The Godfather Part 3 gets so much hate. Why do people hate this film so much? Granted, of course, it is not as good as the first two films. Fine, I understand that. I mean, it was never gonna, achieve that level of greatness, after that amount of time. But you can't deny this. Francis Ford Coppola cares about his films. He cares about what he makes. And this is another beautifully made film. It is so well made. The craft that's gone into it is fantastic. And the love and the care is on screen. And you can tell it's a film that people really cared about behind the scenes. To me, I always thought that The Godfather worked as a trilogy because with the way the second film ended, you can't end the series like that. You needed Michael to find some kind of redemption and remorse for what he's done. And this film really is, the softer side of Michael. Michael is trying to undo a lot of the evil that he inflicted in part two by giving a lot of money to charity and also trying to seek some comfort in the Lord to help him get over the grief of his brother and obviously the guilt of ordering his brother's death in the previous film, which is incredibly sad. As well, we get to see a lot of family dynamics. He's desperately trying to win back the affections of Kay, played by Diane Keaton, and it's interesting to also see their children grown up. We see Mary, played by the director's daughter, Sofia Coppola, and Tony as well, who wants to be a musician, but Michael is encouraging him to be a lawyer. So a lot of this film, like the first two, it's very much a family drama. It's centered around the Corleone family. Only this time, I don't think it's quite as dark and as intense as it has been. I mean, there are certain scenes of brutality, of course, like that helicopter attack scene and the scene when Vincent's apartment gets invaded by those two guys. But it's fairly tame compared to the first two. Well, then, saying that, there's also the opera scene as well. So in that sense, The Godfather 3 still feels very consistent to the first two films. Tonally, and obviously in terms of the cinematography, it feels very consistent. And the way that it begins with a celebratory event and then the tragedy unfolds that way, it's very much the same sort of structure as the first two films. And as for the script, some people criticize the script. They don't think it's all that good with the plot about the bank and Michael's money and all of that. But I actually find it quite interesting. It's not the most interesting aspect of the story, but I think when the film is at its best is when it is being dramatic. Certainly the ending, oh my god, the ending is a real tearjerker. I must say that. It did literally reduce me to tears. The tragedy of that ending is that Michael came so close to having a happy ending and to having his family back, and he had almost completed his redemption arc, and he tried to win back the affections of Kay and his children, but it was taken away in an instant by, spoiler alert, the death of his daughter. The death of Mary. Oh my god, that is tragic with a capital T is just, wow, it's so beautifully done. And the look of shock on Pacino's face, the way he screams, is heartbreaking. So heartbreaking. And Diane Keaton's performance in that moment is also very heartbreaking as well. And, you know, it's just so sad as well when you think of the journey that Michael has been on. And I suppose because he killed his brother, it's like the world is kind of punishing him a little bit for what he's done. But it's so freaking sad. It really is, especially as Mary was such an innocent character. Speaking of which, yes, Sofia Coppola is not the best actress, and definitely it is a slight issue with the film, but it's not a major one. I would describe her performance as okay. It's not bad, but it's not good either. It's kind of very one note. You know, I don't think she gives as much emotion as she could, but she's a nice looking girl, and some of the romantic scenes are kind of nice because we meet her long lost cousin Vincent, or Vincenzo, who is the bastard son of Sonny, who was killed in the first film. It turns out that obviously Vincent and Mary are cousins, but they end up falling in love, having a bit of a romance. Luckily, there's not really any sex scenes as such, but obviously there's a slight incestuous thing going on there, and Michael is determined for that not to happen. And of course, Michael is trying to give up being the Godfather. He's getting to a point where he's too old to kind of continue it, and there's no one else that wants to do it. His son doesn't want to do it. He wants nothing to do with the family business because of all the bad memories. So Vincent is the one who wants it, and Michael is kind of trying to groom him into being the Godfather, but trying to make the right decisions and not make the same mistakes he did. So it's kind of interesting to see how the role of the Godfather is kind of really caused a lot of problems for this family. Talia Shire returns as Connie. It's nice to see her back. She doesn't get a huge amount to do, but it's nice that she's in the film, and she kind of, I guess, reforms her relationship with Michael. They sort of cling on to each other because both their siblings are dead, and all they have is each other. Connie doesn't really have anyone else. So yeah, but it is nice to see her again. The music, I think, is very good. Once again, feeling very much like the previous two films. Francis Ford Coppola's direction is very good. Diane Keaton is very good as Kay. It's nice to see her back, and how she's struggling to kind of accept Michael again, and she's not sure if she can trust him anymore, which is totally understandable under the circumstances. There's that fantastic scene where he takes her to Sicily and explains about some of his family history, and he says how he still loves her and he wants her to forgive him, and he's very sorry for what happened in the second film. But of course, it's going to take a lot more than that to win to win her around. And of course, in the end, when they go to the opera house to watch their son perform afterwards when their daughter is killed, you know, how tragic is that? But before that, we do get a sense that maybe Kay and Michael are starting to fall in love again, and that's really nice. I mean, maybe not as much as they were in the first film, but perhaps she is starting to trust him a little bit more. But then, of course, tragedy strikes, and yeah, I don't think she'll ever forgive Michael because, you know, Michael being the Godfather brought all this tragedy upon their family. And the way that Michael actually dies, spoiler alert, is very sad. You know, he's an old man and he's sat in his chair and he's alone. I mean, Michael really is the central, I don't know if protagonist is the right word, but the central character of these three films. Yeah, you can make the argument that the first film was about Vito, but I think that Michael is the central character, and it's about his journey, the way he goes from a young boy with big aspirations, but gets caught up in the family business. It corrupts him, it turns him into a villain. Then he commits the ultimate betrayal and kills his own brother. And then in the third film, he has to reform himself and redeem himself to become a good man again. So that sounds very simple, but that is an arc that is over 3 films, and it's been very well thought out, and it's such a brilliant story, and so well told, and you believe the emotion of every single character in this one. That being said, the pace of this movie, even though it's the shortest of the 3 at 2 hours 50 minutes, I mean, it's still long, but this movie, for me, it just didn't have as much momentum as the first 2. Like, it still moved at a brisk pace, but I just thought in terms of the story, there wasn't as much filling the runtime as there was previously. Now, I understand the first 2 films were phenomenal, and they're 2 of the greatest films of all time, so to follow that, you know, it's not an easy task. And I think this movie is really underrated. I think he did an excellent job, and I honestly think people should stop bashing it. It's not really that bad. It really isn't. The cinematography is beautiful. Looks just as good as the first 2. And like I said, the passion and the dedication is on the screen, people. You can see it. You know, you can see how much effort went into this, and there are some really powerful emotional moments in this film, absolutely. And the flashbacks that they use of the first two films do work as well within the story. And I think that it's a very, very good wrap up to this trilogy, and it tells the third act of the story, which I think is amazing. You know, perhaps the script is not as strong as the first two, but I don't mind. I still think that this was a necessary film to make because you needed to see the resolution of Michael's character. It wouldn't have been right just to end it on the second film. Much the same as well, Michael is also suffering from diabetes. Yeah, it's tragic as well when he has the stroke and then he calls out Fredo's name, and I guess he feels like it's kind of life, like karma's coming back to haunt him and life is paying him back for his crimes. And you know, that's what makes Michael such an interesting character, is because he does learn to feel remorse, and he does, you know, want to absolve his sins, and he does want to change. He doesn't want to be remembered as this villain that became so corrupt and he nearly lost everything. And I think, again, that's the whole point of the Godfather position, is that it's a position that you have to know what to do and not lose sight of why you're doing what you're doing. And Michael lost sight of that, whereas his dad was a much more level-headed. Vito, he was much more level-headed. He did some awful things, but he never forgot his family. Michael forgot his family, and look where it ended. So I think Andy Garcia is very good as Vincent, and I like his character. He's kind of like his dad, son. He's a bit hot-headed and a bit, you know, a bit of a player, sort of charming and everything. But you know, I do like him very much. I mean, the romance is actually kind of sweet, you know, despite the fact that it's a little bit incestuous with the fact that they're cousins. But at the same time, it's kind of sad that it ends in the way that Vincent has to give up Mary in order to be the Godfather, because he's the one that then becomes the Godfather after Michael, because Michael has had enough of it. He needs to start a new life and start a new path and get it out of his system. And there's that interesting scene where they kind of bless Vincent, they kind of anoint him as the Godfather, and then everyone's kissing his hands, and Michael kind of looks at him and he's slightly reluctant, I think, because he knows that Vincent is a little bit hot-headed, but at the same time, he's happy to wash his hands of it. And also, he wants to make sure that his daughter is not going to be harmed. So, yeah, you can understand why there's conflicting feelings there. We also have Joe Mantegna as Joey Zaza. This guy is actually the guy that voices Fat Tony in The Simpsons. So it's kind of funny to see him in this film, and he's good in his brief role. We also got Richard Bright returning as Al Neri. Al is back in this one. He's a little bit older, but it's nice to see him back as well. So yeah, The Godfather Part 3, this movie is fantastic. It really is. Is it as good as the first two? No, it isn't. Sofia Coppola has a slight problem, and the momentum does kind of... It's a little slower than it is in the first two, but I still thought the pace was pretty good. I thought any longer and it probably would have been too long. So I'm going to give The Godfather Part 3 a generous score of 10 out of 10. Yeah, I was tempted to go 9. I thought, you know what, it just creeps in at a low 10. I think, you know what, it's fine. And that completes the Godfather reviews. Yeah, the Godfather trilogy is, hands down, one of cinema's greatest trilogies of all time. I don't care what people say about the third one. I love the third one just as much as 1 and 2. I mean, 1 and 2 are slightly better, but I do think the third one is almost in the same league. And I think that people should look at it with a bit more appreciation. And Al Pacino... what a fantastic actor. What an absolutely fantastic actor, you know, to be Michael and carry this all the way through. I mean, these 3 films, they are just absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Jack, for recommending these films to me. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. So what do you think of The Godfather Part 3? Please comment down below, let me know, and please hit the like and subscribe button for more reviews to come in the future. And until next time, I'm Mr. TARDIS11. Thank you for watching. See ya. Bye for now.